Hi, it's Doug DeVitri with the CoTrackPro Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. It's Christina McGhee. She's the founder of Divorce and Children and also the co-parenting specialist certification. Welcome, Christina.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Doug. Thanks so much.
Well, I love the work that you're doing because you're integrating many of the professionals, right? The family law attorneys, the mediators, the co-parenting counselors, many of these professionals to be able to work on the benefit of families and their children.
hmm
Let, let's let you explain this because this is kind of something that you do on a daily basis on how you're helping the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, so really what makes the work that I do a little bit different than others is I advocate for a child-centered approach in working with parents. And it's something I've been doing for probably the last 20 to 25 years. I started out in this space as a parent educator and then transitioned into divorce coaching. And over the course of my career, I've talked with thousands and thousands of parents. But what I quickly realized is that just teaching parents, just educating parents, just guiding them was not enough. That really the system which parents operate in, those professionals I call first responders, those early touch points
Hmm.
within the process, also needed to have information and support, skills and tools that they could use to really leverage their influence in a very positive way. I very firmly believe that when parents are able to get access to good information and support in the early stages of the process, it can significantly shift where they end up, right? The outcome for kids becomes better, the outcome for parents becomes better. Like it's just a win win all the way around. And it's also a win for professionals because they are able to engage with their clients in more meaningful and helpful ways, which, let's face it, makes happier clients.
And how has this evolved over the last 5 to 10 years, right? Because I imagine, te now we have technology working with us. We've got virtual working on our behalf. What are some of the things that you're seeing or trends that these professionals need to be in tune with?
Right. Well, that it now is such an interesting time in our history, in our society. I can tell you that I have, as I said, been in this space for a really long time, and I have seen more change in the last, I would say, 8 to 12 months than I have seen over the course of my career. Right
Wow.
now, more than ever, we have so many ways to get information and to connect with one another, and yet we're seeing mental health issues spike at an all-time high. Loneliness is becoming an epidemic, right? We are more disconnected than ever. And so for me, I think that professionals who want to move forward and be successful in this space really have the responsibility of straddling two very big dynamics. And one is technology, because it's here to stay. It's going to be part of our future. And we need to engage with it. We need to learn it. We need to know how to use the tools and how we can use them in a way to really do what we do better, right? How do we get better at what we do? I think the other side of that is moving forward, engagement and connection are going to be more important than ever, right? How we show up in those moments with our clients are really, really important. And, to think that connection and engagement are kind of the icing on the cake is no longer true. They are the cake, right? It's the currency of the future. And so I am now at a place within my career where I cannot talk about one without talking about the other. So in our co-parenting specialist training program, one of the things that we've started doing is incorporating how can we use artificial intelligence in a way that helps us skill up, show up better for our clients, and expand what we're able to offer. And along with, connecting and engaging, and really learning how to leverage a child-centered approach within our specific discipline.
Sure. And what would you say the outcomes are, right? Because there's all of these different types of training programs and processes, but ultimately the outcomes are what matter most. It's not just short term, right? But long term. So you're not dealing with
Right.
this on a regular basis. How would you measure? Are there any kind of metrics for success when you're looking at going from maybe a high conflict situation to where, now we're on the other side where we're peaceful and we're cooperating, we're collaborative. Uh, how
That's a
many?
tough one. That's a
Yeah.
tough one, right? Because, gosh, there's so many different dynamics, and there's not a lot of good measures out there. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are banging down the door to research separating and divorcing couples. And the other piece of that is what I can tell you within my own work, I've discovered that there are a lot of co-parents in the very beginning stages who will self-identify as high conflict, when actually they don't quite meet the criteria for high conflict, but that's how it feels in
Sure.
those early stages. And so for me, that's kind of an indicator that there's a wealth of possibility. And I encourage professionals to consider that as well. What may look like high conflict on the surface may be a lack of communication, a lack of skill, parents need help being grounded and
Mm,
calm. And I think that's where professionals can really step in and make a significant difference, because how you manage the process, the words you're using, the way you're describing it, talking about it, the educational support that you can offer, the framing of a child-centered approach can be game changing. And really, in terms of evidence, what I can tell you is if you go take a look at our website and see what some of our graduates have had to say about it, you'll get a pretty good idea of how they view the skills that they've learned and been able to use. And probably one of the things that I love hearing the most from participants in our program is that we teach it over a 2-week period. So it's a Thursday, Friday, and then they come back the next week. It's another Thursday, Friday. Is that in between that week, people come back on day 3 and they're like, oh, I've already started using the materials. And here's what happened. Like when I used this tool,
mm.
it opened up a completely different conversation. Right. So it's a very practical, we had one of our grads describe it as a boots on the ground experience. We have a very practical approach to how do we deal with real world challenges? What is it that's walking in the door? What are we seeing when we're in the room with people or on a virtual meeting with people? And then how do we address those challenges in a way where we're really going to get some results? We're going to shift perspectives.
Sure, and this is a team approach, right? Because you have multiple people really responsible for one family. You have family law attorney, maybe two, the guardian ad litem, the therapist, maybe it's the parent coordinator, maybe it's the school administrator. Like, how do you collaborate with these professionals to make sure that, look, this is where we are and this is where we're making progress, so uh, we can minimize some of that conflict. I think a lot of this is just conflict prevention, so we can just get to where we should be.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so the courses by design are multidisciplinary. So when you participate in the course, there's family lawyers in the room, there's collaborative lawyers, mediators, a therapist, co-parenting counselors, divorce coaches. Sometimes we have some financial neutrals. We've had people with education backgrounds join the program. And that really adds like a layer of richness, because you get not only the perspective of us as trainers, the information we have to share, but also, right, we learn from each other. It's an environment where we are all learning from one another. And digging into some very deep conversations. And one of the things that I can say is you're absolutely right. It is about like, how do we engage in conflict prevention? How do we give people another way of viewing what they're going through and help them identify possibilities and opportunities? And I very much believe in ripples of change, right? If you have one person within a system that has a different perspective, that can share information with the wider network, then that's where you start seeing the change. Right. And that's
Sure.
and I think that I don't look at the co-parenting specialist program as just a course that people take.
Mhm.
I aim to make it a movement. I'm looking to shift the culture of divorce, to change the conversation, because I believe that there is a better way to do it. And we can wait for the court system to figure it out. We're going to be waiting a very long time. However, the more professionals that have access to information about a child-centered approach,
Hmm.
what kids need at different age and developmental stages, the emotional landscape of divorce for these families, the better job we can do of showing up for them. And that to me is where the change is going to take place.
Wow, it's really amazing how much work goes into this. And I imagine that, you've obviously have your successes that you've posted on your website. I'd like for you to share some of the roadblocks that you've seen in families getting the success that they want. And so you can maybe think about the roadblocks as it pertains to their compliance, right? With
Mhm.
the suggestions that they're offered from multiple professionals, or maybe there's a professional who maybe isn't cooperating or a part of the process like you would hope. What are some of the roadblocks you've seen that have helped prevent families from really kind of getting to where they want to go?
Well, I think one of the biggest is that the resources, the support comes much further down the road instead of in the beginning stages, right?
Mm.
Even though we have access to the wide web, right? Finding information, finding the right kind of help can be really difficult for families. Like for many parents, looking for help is just as overwhelming as the problem they're dealing with. And so I think that's the first roadblock. I think the other is that we have a system that is designed to uh, guide people to protect themselves. So if I'm a parent and I'm going to go through a divorce, I'm thinking about uncoupling from my spouse. What's the first thing I think of? It usually isn't, I think I better find a divorce coach, or maybe I need to find a co parenting specialist, or maybe I need to read this book. It's usually like, oh, how do I protect myself? I better get a lawyer. um,
Right.
some intermediation, but again, I think there's a fair amount of apprehension because the trust breaks down, the communication breaks down. We're not looking at one another through the very best lens. We're looking at each other with suspicion, distrust, expecting the worst, and that doesn't make a good foundation for developing a co-parenting relationship or redefining that co-parenting relationship. And I think that's also another piece. Like, how do we get from being partners to viewing ourselves as always parents? Like, that's a big transition. And um, the last thing that I'll say is I think our society doesn't do a lot of favors for people that are going through divorce, right? There is still so much stigma, right, around divorce. And as a society, we don't tend to like show up and support people through this. Like, nobody's showing up at the door with a casserole going, hey, sorry you're going through this. It must be a tough time. How can I help? Like, a lot of times families are losing their support system at a rapid rate, and the friends disappear. Sometimes, you know, your spouse's family was your support system and now you don't have that anymore. And so everything changes all at once over an extended period of time for these families. And so it's a very long road, which is why I think first responders have an opportunity to make a real difference for these families, that in those early stages, to help them feel seen and heard, to connect them with good supports that enhance the work that you're doing, can make such a huge difference.
Well, thank you. And I love what you've done with your certification, right? Because now, like, if I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to go through this process, I want to make sure that every one of my professionals have gone through Christina's training
Mm.
because they're actually supporting the family as a whole, right? Like, I would want to make sure that they kind of had that indicator. So I imagine that you have a lot of interest in many different roles to just put together their team, right? To being certified.
Well, one of the things that we've done in order to further the movement is that on our website, we do have 2 pages. One is Meet Our Grads, and it's got a listing of everyone that we've trained. And so far, we've trained probably close to 250 professionals. And then we also, and they're listed by state and area of the world because it is also an international community. And then we have the find a professional page. So if you're a parent or if you're a professional in an area and you're looking to network with people who have this information, who have this training, if you go to the Find a Professional page, it's got a searchable database and you can search by location or profession or name and find other people in the area that have received this training, that are focused on using a child-centered approach that you can connect with, or you can refer parents to, or parents can find someone themselves.
Yeah, and it was really interesting the video that you shared with me called Split, right?
Documentary,
Yeah,
yeah.
the documentary where the children are talking about what they're going through and their language and their emotions, and it's like that was really, really powerful. And so I want to I'm curious, right? With this process and working with families, um, do you involve the children? Do their opinions matter through the process? Is it
Well,
something like, is there an age
absolutely.
point where they can start to be a part of the conversation?
Well, I think you have to proceed with caution when you involve children in the process. I very much believe that children need to have a voice, but not ultimate choice. That decisions need to reside with parents, because when you put children in the position of being decision makers, right, in order to say yes to one parent, they have to say no to the other. And kids, as you learned from the documentary Split, really struggle with wanting to keep things fair, wanting to keep things balanced. And that isn't a burden that children of any age should have to bear. So, I believe that we need to definitely align ourselves with how children feel about this process, which is why within the training, I show clips from both Split documentaries. There are two for anyone that's not familiar with them. I'm a woman who wears many hats. And one of the other things I do, in addition to working with parents and training, is I've been intimately involved in the Split Outreach Project. And through that project, we have produced two documentaries. The first is Split the Early Years, and it shares the stories of 12 kids between the ages of 6 and 12 that have experienced divorce. And it's just kids on screen talking in a very unfiltered way about their experience. And it is incredibly insightful. It's insightful for parents, it's insightful for professionals. The really cool thing about the project is that Ellen Bruno, who is the creative force behind these films, circled back 10 years later and re-interviewed 11 of the original 12 kids. So you get to meet them as teens and young adults, reflecting back on their childhoods. And you get to hear from them firsthand, again, their lived experience of growing up out of two households, of having divorced parents, and the ways that divorce was woven into their lives moving forward. And in many ways, still is. I mean, I believe divorce isn't an experience that happens in children's lives, it's an experience that becomes a part of their lives for the rest of their lives.
Mm. Well, that's pretty powerful. You know, you're changing lives, and the approach that you've taken where you're helping the professionals help, I don't know how many they might help in the course of a year, but it's a multiplier effect. So that's what I'm most excited for you about. What are you most excited about in the next couple of years as information doubles as as AI starts to get smarter? Um, what are you most excited about?
um, I think what excites me most is the opportunities, right? The opportunities that are there. Again, I very much come from the perspective of I want to be ahead of the curve. And that doesn't mean that I have to become an AI expert, but it does mean that I have to be familiar with the tools. And I've run into so many professionals that are not. And so that would be one of my takeaways for everybody that's listening. If you're a professional in this field, get in there, start using it, start playing around with it, um, and figure out how you can be creative with it. I look at AI as not something that will take over what I do, but it is an opportunity to collaborate, right?
Yeah.
It's like taking your creative thinking and putting it on steroids, because there's so much opportunity there. And I also think that it's really important for us to hang on to our critical thinking. Again, I'm not handing over my thinking, my thought process, what I know to be true, my values, to
Absolutely.
AI, but I am using it to enhance the work that I do. And I think that there's just so much opportunity, um, now more than ever. I am finding that there are more professionals that are really wanting to change the way they work. They're disenchanted with the system, right? They want more for families. They want to be doing meaningful work. They want to reconnect with their why they even started this in the first place. And I just think there's a lot of possibilities. So for me, that is very exciting. I also find it exciting this, you said multiplier, right? The ripple effect that with every professional that goes through our training, there are so many lives that they each individually touch, and that I don't know that there's any way to really know understand the full power and potential of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, until somebody else does, right? And then they have to figure it out. But no, yeah, no, I completely agree with everything that you've said. I'm excited about the tools that, and it's not just ChatGPT, right? There are so many others that are out there that can be integrated or customized or built, and that's what we're trying to do with CoTrack Pro. If you had one final tip for a professional who's considering going through your program and they don't know where to start, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
I can go to your website, right? But
Yeah. Well, no,
right?
I would
We'll put
say,
that in the show notes. Yeah.
yeah, I would say check us out. Check us out. Go look at the testimonials, see what our grads have to say, and if this feels like a fit for you, we would be honored to have you join us. And I think that the vast majority of professionals, they do want to do this differently. They do want to have options. And what I can guarantee is that anyone that goes through our program, they are going to walk away with a wealth of resources. I mean, we offer a very comprehensive toolkit, and every day has a training guide where parents get, not parents, we're professionals. We get a lot of information along with just different resources, different tools. It's packed. You could probably fill a binder with all the things that we give away during the 4 days that we have together. Um, so yeah, I would say come join us. We'd love to have you.
Well, Christina, I've loved having you here on the CoTrack Pro podcast. Thanks very much. We'll put all these goodies in the show notes for the podcast and hope to collaborate with you in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it.